Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope you're doing well this afternoon. This is the Roaming Prepper channel. I'm your host, Pete. And today I want to talk about something, and I went down a rabbit hole. I was looking at global demographics. I was actually, other than my book, Defensive Preparedness, I was actually planning to write a second one along the same lines, but my grad school class started. But the other one would have been about basically around the world, different scenarios. And while I went down this rabbit hole of population and movement and migration and all this stuff, I went down the China population rabbit hole. And that was interesting. And I'll tell you why. So if you don't follow this channel, I've only seen a few of their videos, or his videos. I'm assuming it's a guy. The channel's pretty good. It's called Business Basics. And they do, he does like business and geopolitical stuff, but he doesn't get too into the weeds with, oh, I don't like this guy, that guy. He just says, you know, this person did this and this is what happened. And you decide what you want. But he went down the Chinese population. Now, most of us think or believe or have been told that China has a 1.4 billion population. And they're the biggest, most populous country in the world. And he proposes that is an outright lie, and that China is actually not only in economic trouble, it has experienced a population collapse that they are very, very much trying to hide. So I can't go into all the details the way he did. This guy did a great job. He brought up articles and reports. But in a nutshell, China has been saying, we are a 1.4 billion population. We are bigger than India. We're bigger than America. We're just big. And that is to entice technology, business, investment, money into the country, right? Because you think about it, I have 1 billion people I can sell to. That's a big market in theory. I have 1 billion workers or people, which means a massive workforce. So if I build a factory there, they can provide plenty of people and it'll keep my costs down, right? But it's a lie. So what he did, and I'm going to very quickly summarize, and I'm probably not doing Business Basics any justice, but I cross-referenced some of the other articles, and I went down this complete rabbit hole. So back after the communists took over, right, so in the late 1940s, early 1950s, right, Taiwan spun off, was it Chiang Kai-shek got run off, and basically China took over, the Communist Party took over China. They had a civil war for years, right? Then in 1958 to 62, somewhere in that realm, I might be screwing up the years there, they went through a famine, and it was a massively bad famine. And so they've had some really major population crashes. China also had a shooting war, which I was unaware of, in Vietnam. After we left, in 1972, I think the very last troops and advisors were gone, embassy was closed, all that. They went in there 1975, and the Vietnamese kicked the shit out of them in the jungle because now the country was united and we left a bunch of equipment there. It sounds familiar, huh? And they basically used all our shit and all the Russian shit against the Chinese and tore the shit out of the Chinese military, and the Chinese ran away. And that's why Vietnam didn't like China. I didn't know this. And I love history. I was completely unaware, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole I've yet to go down. But the bottom line is, a Russian, I guess, analyst, a Russian geoscience, geopolitical analyst, ran the numbers based on the population of Shanghai, which up until recently, and Hong Kong, which up until recently were under British rule back in 99, 2000 when they turned over. And then extrapolated Beijing, Xi'an, Chengdu, a few other cities based on number of cities. And he's estimating they're nowhere near 1.4 billion. He actually thinks it's between 5 and 800 million. So you think, okay, there's a single reference point. Well, the Japanese did a similar study, and they used cell phone usage. And before COVID, they had 800 million roughly 800, well, you subtract 800 million, they have so many million cell phone and tablet users using cellular data. And they extrapolated for every so many kids, for so many adults, you have so many kids, and they came up with between 750 and 900 million. So again, two totally different ways, two different countries, and they came up roughly the same number. They're like, there's nowhere near that many million. Then a European analyst did the same thing with salt and rice consumption, food consumption, came up with the 800 million number, give or take some. So that was super interesting. Three completely different countries, none of which, it's not like the US is trying to badmouth China. Three totally different countries came up with three different approaches, came to roughly the same number, which was way less than the 1.4 or 1.5 billion they claimed. That was pre-COVID. Another guy did two analyses, one on the rate of death early in the pandemic, during Rona, before the Chinese stopped reporting. China claims it only had 83,000 people die in the coronavirus outbreak. 83,000. We had what, a couple of million in America? And it was not just the Rona, it was like affiliated diseases, and they didn't use the ventilators right, but largely due to the disease causing a problem, and then the person fell ill and passed away from some other reason. Some of it was even, self-deletion, if you will, but we had a couple of million, and that was big. They're saying that they lost over 30 million cell phone users. They just gone. And they're also reporting that in the country, they don't have the reporting the cities do. They built over 69, so they had about 5,000 cremation furnaces, the kiln, if you will. They built up to 6,900, so their number had gone from 5,000 to 6,900. So another analyst from Canada did a study on how many cremations they could do, and then satellite images showed that these crematoriums were just running 24/7. And they were hiring more people because they were putting it on social media, jobs available at this crematorium. And that's in the city. They're saying roughly 200 million passed away in China. Not only that, at a 1-to-1 ratio, urban to rural, they're guesstimating, if you keep that consistency, because that's what they saw in Europe, Russia, and the US and Canada, they're saying if China was roughly the same as these other big countries, it was another 200 million in the countryside, 400 million. So even if you took the 1.4 billion, they lost a huge portion of their population. But now remember, those three analysts from three different countries, three different approaches, are all saying they're about 800 million. Well, if they lost 400 of the 800 million, that's putting them between 3 and 400 million population. There are people right now in China going through black market VPNs, posting videos saying the cities are empty. So we've all seen it on the videos, empty buildings. Oh, we built these buildings. We all know their real estate market is fake. They're just building shit and people don't live there. Hell, the buildings are collapsing on the people that do live there. But they're saying there's nowhere near. They might actually have a population about the size of the US. It may be the size of Europe as an aggregate, or a little bit bigger than Russia, nowhere near. Whereas India, which is very transparent because of their history with the British rule, their more parliamentary system, is, other than they have some bad reporting, their number about 1.1, 1.2, most, the WHO, which we all don't love, but the WHO, the US, the Russians all kind of did a population study, and they were like, yeah, it's a little over 1 billion. So the numbers kind of jive there, and it's hard. People move away, people die, and it's not reported. But to have that big a discrepancy, why would China hide that? A couple of reasons. One, the billion-person population encouraged all our technology, all these companies all over the world to build factories there. What do you think China was doing? They were stealing the tech. As a matter of fact, the company I used to work for was selling technology here. They were building some of it in China. And all of a sudden, that Chinese firm opened the facility in Texas to compete against us. This was years ago. And my CEO was pissed at the time. And he's like, how the hell did they do this? And I'm like, because you shipped our shit over there. And they created their own, because they wanted to save money on the manufacturing instead of sending it to like Taiwan or South Korea or somewhere where it's actually friendly, or keeping it here. No, they sent it to the Chinese. And you know what they did? They modified it in a way that we couldn't hit them on a patent and brought it back. So I personally experienced this. But think about it. Right now, they're having riots in Guangdong and Xi'an. It's getting bad in China. And with these tariff threats, it's absolutely screwing up their market. People are trying to flee the country. There's a serious, serious problem in China. Now, why is that relevant to us? Is because when a country gets in trouble like that, a country starts to panic. The government, which has been trying to, give this party line story for so long, starts to go down. They start to make bad decisions. And that's a bad decision made by a nuclear country. So as of this morning, I'm recording this during the weekend, guys, but during the morning, this morning, it was reported that India has now declared that China is its biggest geopolitical and strategic threat. Pakistan is simply a regional, tactical security issue. That's a big deal. All of a sudden, we're trying to bring all this stuff to India, and Pakistan attacks India. Or, well, a surrogate attacks India using Chinese tech. And yes, they've confirmed those missiles. A lot of those missiles and bombs and other equipment they're finding are purely Chinese made. Other than some old-ass Russian Kalashnikovs, that's some Chinese weaponry, because the Indians buy from Russia, and they buy a lot, so Russia doesn't want to pee in their Cheerios and sell to the other guy too. So they're getting it from North Korea and China. It's almost like China wanted to cause a problem. And this is what scares me, is if the Pakistan-India thing gets resolved and they all calm down, India is going to turn their attention to China and start beating them up economically. And if China has been lying and that gets out, people are going to leave that country, investment-wise, technology-wise, which I think they should, because it's become dangerous to the rest of us. But what are they going to do? Again, I love talking about Clancy's book, and I probably need to reread it, The Bear and the Dragon, where he talks about China suddenly getting into an abrupt economic tailspin. Now, his scenario is different. What causes it is actually a terror attack against the infrastructure in China, which is still completely plausible. But think about that. If China's economy collapses, they start having riots. So it's the quickest way to redirect your population is to go pick a fight with someone. Who are they going to pick a fight with? Are they going to make a run at Taiwan? Are they going to go mix it up with the Philippines, Vietnam? We don't have a dog in the race if they want to go get beaten up by the little Vietnamese army, which apparently is very good at fighting in the jungles, unlike the Chinese, apparently. But if they pick fights with Japan, they pick fights with Taiwan, they go and lob a missile at Guam or one of our Pacific bases, it's going to be on. That's something that scares me. It's not the geopolitics or the money per se. It's the human reaction. I'm actually studying that in my graduate class right now, economic risk and investor reaction. And a lot of the terrible decisions made in the market are not done because a company per se failed or someone didn't do their math, but because someone psychologically overreacted. And for us to think that the Chinese leaders won't do the same thing is kind of a dangerous proposition. Anyway, folks, China is in trouble. The more I go down this rabbit hole, the more I think they're going to have an issue here in the near future. And unfortunately, we all may suffer for it. But in any case, folks, you guys keep that in the back of your minds. I'm going to close this one out. Just my geopolitical conspiracy theory. It's not even a conspiracy. It's my geopolitical theory. But I would recommend the Business Basics channel if you're going to go find that video. Very well done. It is a long video. It took me, it's almost an hour. So, I mean, I watched it in pieces over the course of an afternoon while I was doing other stuff. But it was well worth the watch. You guys be good, be safe out there. And watch what you do and pay attention, because that kind of stuff affects supply chain. That affects us. So know your supply chain. We'll see you later, guys.